questions, we got answers. The Last Minute Fantasy Scramble starts in 10,
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Last Minute Fantasy Scramble. My name is Kevin McCartney. Alongside me today are Bobby Digital Janis and John Viveros. So, last week was another crazy week. Week 2 was riddled with injuries. Week 3, not only did we get the injuries, but we got this COVID factor thrown into it. So there's a lot going on. But before we get into any of that, I want to take a look at this crazy game that we had last night between the Chiefs and the Ravens. Bobby, what do you think about the Chiefs last night?
If you have any one of those top 4 Chief guys on your roster, Edwards-Helaire, Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, or Patrick Mahomes, you're already happy you got one of them, but you might have to be even more ecstatic because we all thought the Ravens are a tough defense, and they are, and the Chiefs just were able to do whatever they wanted. Mahomes getting everybody involved, Edwards-Helaire involved in the passing game as well. He had 20 touches. Travis Kelsey, Tyreek Hill all got theirs, and what more can we say about Patrick Mahomes? The fact that Patrick Mahomes last year said that halfway through last season he finally learned how to read defenses, and it showed when he came back from his injury. Besides that fluky loss to the Titans, he's now 12-0 since then, and of course winning the Super Bowl. I mean, it's scary, and all these guys are matchup proof. The Chiefs are a real scary team right now, and for fantasy, anybody investing in stocks of Kansas City with those players has to be ecstatic.
Yeah, and going into this matchup, so many people were excited that this was going to be the game of the year. You have the Chiefs, you have the Ravens, you have Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, arguably the two best, not only the best young quarterbacks in the game, but two of the best quarterbacks in the game right now. A lot of fantasy leagues picked 1 and 2. But Lamar Jackson might have showed that he was struggling against this Kansas City team, even went as far as calling them his kryptonite. John, what do you think of this Ravens side of things?
Yeah, I'm more so just I'm just really impressed with like the Kansas City defense. Like they honed in and they buckled down. Lamar Jackson, there's a ridiculous stat. He's something like 20-1 or 20-2 against the rest of the NFL, and he's 0-3 in the regular season against the Chiefs. Like that's just insane to think about. He's always had accuracy problems as long as he's been in the league, his 3 years, or 2.5, I guess, if you count when he first started. But he was about 50% completion, only 97 yards and a touchdown. And he had 2 fumbles, lost one of them. So he just couldn't get going. And obviously, like he'll right the ship eventually. But however he goes, like that's how this Ravens team goes. J.K. Dobbins was the leading receiver on the team with 38 yards on 4 catches. So I mean, he needs to be a little more accurate and definitely they have to open up stuff. And if he doesn't open it up, like the rest of the team's going to struggle.
Yeah, and it's hard to really tell whether it comes down to the Chiefs defense really stepping up or Lamar Jackson just not being good enough in these situations against the Chiefs. But only time will tell. That being said, I want to move on. There were some reports recently that between the Titans and the Minnesota Vikings, there are facilities being shut down. Players have tested positive. Both players and members of the staff have tested positive for COVID-19. Now, we knew this would be a potential factor going into this NFL season. We knew there'd be plenty of question marks. And what we don't know is how this is going to affect things moving forward. If those are 2 teams that are affected, that's 4 teams that are going to be affected on Sunday potentially. And games that could be moved around, like rescheduled. Do any of you guys have any take on what's going on with this? Bobby, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, first off, something like this might have been bound to happen eventually. It happened with baseball. If you had a few players on some teams catch the virus, and they had some postponements, but overall everything besides that was running pretty smoothly. So big picture, I wouldn't be too concerned. But if you have players on some of those teams, I would be still optimistic and expect them to play this week. I would just make sure to have a backup plan ready just in case.
And John, what are your thoughts on this? Like, I know that, especially, I believe it was the Minnesota side, there were some players that, actually, it may have been Tennessee. I'm not sure about this. Maybe you have more insight on this.
Yeah, Tennessee had it was eight players and staff that tested positive, and then Minnesota just from being in contact. They were the ones that they shut down their facilities as well. Latest I've heard is that they're telling the opponents, like Minnesota's playing Houston, I believe, and Tennessee's playing Pittsburgh, I think it is. That to go on as planned, like the games are going to happen on Sunday, Monday at the latest. But it's going to be really unfortunate if you have anyone on Tennessee or Minnesota because their facilities can't even open until Saturday, from what I've heard, from what I'm hearing. So, like, if you're a Dalvin Cook owner, if you're a Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen owner, definitely you have to be a little worried about that. Same thing from Tennessee side, Ryan Tannehill, Jonnu Smith, anyone on that team, Derrick Henry. Definitely be on the lookout and you need to have a backup plan for them in place.
Absolutely. And speaking about Minnesota, this is an awkward transition, but we're going to go straight to these waiver wires. So, there's one guy on this Minnesota team who, he's a rookie. He kind of made his grand entrance this last week, and that's Justin Jefferson. And I wanted to get your thoughts, John, on what you think of Justin Jefferson. He had potential coming into the draft. I know I drafted him, and I saw that there were a lot of people, including myself, who actually held on to him for the first couple of weeks and dropped him in week 3 to pick up one of these Mike Davis's or Josh Kelly's. What do you think Justin Jefferson can do in this league?
So I think he definitely poses the problem. He's super fast, very good athlete. He's owned in a decent amount of leagues. He went up about 4% after between weeks 2 and week 3, to about 38% in ESPN leagues. He did great with his target share. 15 targets, 12 receptions, 245, or that's on the season. Sorry, seven receptions on 9 targets for 175. So basically, his entire season was done against Tennessee. Not a bad defense either. So Kirk Cousins definitely likes him in matchups, and it sucks, just because he's stuck in an offense with like such a dominant running back as Dalvin Cook, another very good pass catcher in Adam Thielen. So he might be stuck in that awkward like one, like kind of like a receiver 1.5. Like he can play like a 1, but he's kind of a 2. So I don't think you can expect this every week from him, but I think in certain matchups you can definitely he's definitely ready to pop off for a solid 15, 16 a game. I would assume going forward.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at players like Stephon Diggs and the kind of situation he was in last year in Minnesota. He's boom or bust. So you never know what Kirk Cousins you're going to get. And one day the receivers could go pop off for 35 points. The next day, show up with nothing. And I feel like this kind of same situation. Justin Jefferson is kind of stepping in and filling that role that Stephon Diggs has left. And whether he could step up and be that guy on a consistent basis, I'm not quite sure yet. But I definitely think he's worth the stash to have in your leagues for sure. Now, another guy who's been very popular, there were a lot of questions going in last week with the Green Bay Packers situation, especially with Devontae Adams out. Who's going to be that next guy to step forward? Is it going to be Marquez Valdez-Scantling? Is it going to be Allen Lazard? And I think after at least this 1 week without Devontae Adams, Lazard has proved to be the guy. But Bobby, what's your take on this Packers wide receiver situation as far as the waiver wire is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, and we saw flashes of Allen Lazard last year for certain stretches when Adams was out as well. Shows some sort of potential there. And now the fact that Aaron Rodgers is having a career resurgence this season, and even though it's the first 3 games, it looks like he's going to continue to just air it out, and he's just playing with a lot of confidence. And Allen Lazard has seemed to be the guy that's separated himself from MVS more so. I would definitely, if I had to pick between those two, I would definitely prefer Lazard. I mean, Lazard right now is the 10th highest fantasy wide receiver in fantasy points right now. I mean, I don't know how long that'll last, but so he definitely has the potential and a great offense with a great quarterback. So Lazard is the preference here. I know in a lot of my leagues he's already on rosters right now, so it might be hard to try to pick him up. But if you definitely, especially if you need wide receiver depth or you're looking for, you've had injuries, I would definitely prefer Alan Lazard to MVS, and I think he does. Lazard does have potential. He does have wide receiver 2 potential this year. He's owned it so far. So I would prefer him over MVS. We'll see what happens.
So when Devonte Adams gets back, though, do you think that puts a cap on Lazard's ceiling, or do you think that could help open him up more?
I think it puts more of a cap on his ceiling than open him up more. When we saw his biggest game happen, he was clearly the number 1 wide receiver without Adams against the Saints. Adams is the go-to guy. He's the target hog in that offense. So I think it would definitely cap his upside.
Absolutely. And there are plenty of wide receiver options just besides those 2 that we've mentioned so far. John, who else do you like this week from the wide receiver position?
There's a couple I'm looking at. San Francisco's situation is really awkward, just with not really sure like who the quarterback's going to be. Kendrick Bourne had a good week a decent enough week last week. Had I think he was like 10.3, 10.4 points. But the big beneficiary was Brandon Ayuk, not not rostered in many leagues, only about 21% of ESPN leagues. But he definitely popped off, had 21 points against the Giants, and he has some pretty favorable matchups coming up too. So he actually did a lot of damage in the running game, not just in the receiving. So he's a nice dual threat there. He's definitely someone I'd look at if you're in need of a receiver. He has Philly and then the Dolphins over the next 2 weeks. So definitely a good one to look at.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned his name before I did, because I definitely would have butchered it and said something along the lines of Ajuk. As for you, Bobby, who do you like over at the wide receiver position?
Well, outside of Justin Jefferson, to be honest, I'm not really super excited about some of the other options available. I mean, I've heard Alshon Jeffrey's name come floating around. They're saying he has a chance to return, but man, that offensive line and that offense has just not looked good at all. Carson Wentz hasn't looked good, and they do have a tough string of matchups. They have San Francisco, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore, so not matchups you'd really want to target. So I'm not super excited about Jeffrey. A name to keep an eye on is Cole Beasley. He's been around fantasy circles for a while, especially in PPR leagues. John Brown left the game on Sunday, and Cole Beasley in that offense especially is seeing some targets, and he's a floor guy. He's not going to win you any week, but if you need a plug-in or a bye-week filler, especially with John Brown that's out and we don't know how much longer, Cole Beasley's an option you could look at. And then keep an eye on a deep sleeper for waivers is Bills wide receiver Gabriel Davis. They were really high on him, and he's shown a lot of flashes. So that might be another name to keep an eye on. But overall, outside of Jefferson, not super crazy about the rest of the wide receivers that are available on waivers this week.
So wide receivers is a very deep position in general. A lot of people will have some good wide receivers on their team. Over on the other end, though, like the running back position already going into the year was thin and very top heavy, but these guys keep getting injured, and as more and more go down, it opens up more opportunities to snag more off the waiver wires. John, who do you like this week as far as the running back position is concerned?
So the obvious one is going to be Rex Burkhead. Blew up with no James White. Popped off 7 receptions, 49 yards and a touchdown, 6 rushes for 49, and then 2 touchdowns on the ground against a supposedly good Las Vegas team. Granted, Las Vegas flying across country to New England, even without the fans, that's still a difficult place to play. So he's definitely one I'm looking at, and should have a favorable game script against Kansas City. It's going to be a shootout. They're probably going to want to control the ball a little more, so you're probably going to see a lot of Cam, a lot of and you're going to probably see more from him on the ground as well. And then another one to look at, or more so a situation to keep an eye on, is definitely Carlos Hyde in Seattle. He because Chris Carson got hurt, they're saying he's probably going to play, but he's definitely banged up. He's someone who struggled with injuries over the past couple of years, and Carlos Hyde is just probably a good stash. He's good. He's one of those, oh, you need a yard, I'll get you 3. If you need 5 yards, I'll still get you 3. Kind of backs.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those guys who's always going to bang it out. But going back to Rex Burkhead, I don't know. I think I've been watching football long enough that I can't trust any Patriots running back going back in back-to-back weeks. And you look at that crowded backfield, like, I feel that this isn't the first time that you get one of those guys to just go out there, show up for 3 touchdowns in a game, and then do nothing the next week. What indicates from his game that it's something that's going to be able to carry over week to week?
I think just the target share seems like Sony Michel. He didn't really have too good of a game himself, personally. Well, actually, he ran the ball well. I mean, Tony Michel's just not active in the passing game, and I think against the Chiefs, that even though they are going to try to bang it out a little bit more, I think Burkhead's skill set fits against that defense a lot better. But again, like you said, like the Patriots backfield, it's a mystery to all this. I think it's a mystery to Bill Belichick, to be honest, too. Um, but he's probably the hot name. He's gonna be a hot name on the waiver wire. And if you need a running back, grab him. If you just want someone else not to take him, that's probably my go-to running back pick of the week.
Yeah,
Not a banger play. Not a banger of the week. No bangers of the week this week. But
no Drew Sample.
No Drew Samples. Nice one reception to make me feel good. Yeah. So other than that, it's just I think he's just a hot name from having the big game, and that whoever's in last place or first on your waiver priority is going to spend all their FAA bucks on him, and probably gonna regret it. But hey, like I said, he's the hot name. We got to talk about it.
Yeah, I know. I'll definitely be passing up on him. Bobby, you got anybody you want to add to this list?
Well, I mean, just want to say if for some reason Myles Gaskin is available in your waiver wire, he would definitely be my clear first option. I mean, he's the clear-cut starter in Miami now, moving forward. And I would prefer Carlos Hyde over Rex Burkhead, especially if you have Chris Carson or you just need a 1 to 2 week rent-a-player starter. Hyde's going to get the first crack at it, and it is a high-powered offense. They're playing the Miami Dolphins up next, so he's also somebody I'm looking at. And then another guy you might want to look at would be Jeff Wilson if he wasn't scooped up already. I mean, Raheem Mostert dealing with the injury. We're not sure if he'll be back. Jerick McKinnon left the game with an injury. We're not sure what his status is going to be. We'll have to check later in the week. And if one of those guys, again, is missing time, Jeff Wilson's shown that he's capable of at least getting touches. And so when you're looking for a running back on the waiver wire, sometimes volume is key. And so Jeff Wilson might be another name to consider. But again, I'm overall not super excited about the options here as well in this specific waiver wire week. Last week I thought was a little more exciting. But those are some guys you might want to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Last week was a huge week as far as the waiver wire is concerned. So many people went down, which so many names came up. And you look at guys like Mike Davis, who really blew up last week, and he has potential to get things moving going forward as long as Christian McCaffrey's out of the lineup. But that being said, I want to move over into the quarterbacks. And we're going to start with you, Bobby, this time. What quarterbacks do you think are good options to stream or stash this week?
I mean, again, if Joe Burrow's available, I mean, for me is the clear one. I mean, they're playing Jacksonville, and Joe Burrow's showing a capability rushing the ball, and they're going through him. He has plenty of weapons. Another option I do like is Kirk Cousins. They're going up against Houston, and if last week's any indication, I know Mike Zimmer has been been a defense, ball control, run first type offense, but seeing as how their defense has been not very good this year, as opposed to years past where it's always been solid, there's a chance they might have to look at this and say, you know what, maybe we do have to open this up a little more. And I think, especially with Houston, their offense, I think, is going to come around after dealing with some tough matchups. So the Vikings might have to keep pace with them. So I'm liking Kirk Cousins. Now, again, John mentioned earlier, we don't know which Kirk Cousins you're going to get. But if you need a streamer for this week, might want to consider Kirk.
Yeah, it's definitely an option, but I don't know if he's an option that I'd like to have. John, what are your thoughts about the QBs this week?
Yeah, definitely like the rookie, like Joe Burrow if he's available. He's rostered in like 62% of leagues, so not sure if you can grab him. One I'm really a fan of, always been a fan of, is going to be Jared Goff. He's a ninth ranked quarterback right now. He's only rostered in 45% of leagues. Like he's a bona fide quarterback, QB1. He's got some very good matchups coming up. Giants, Washington, and then he even ends the season on a nice little run against the Jets and the Seahawks. The Seahawks have proven that they don't play pass defense. Dak just lit him up for 478 he finished with, something along those lines. The thing that I like about Jared Goff right now, though, is that his accuracy has been very on point. 74% against Philadelphia 2 weeks ago, and then he was 71% against a very, very good Buffalo team with Tre'Davious White. So 27-point game he's coming off of. If he gets the Giants at home, Giants are an awful football team, one of the worst in the league. So it'll probably be a blowout, and so that might cap his production a little bit. But he is definitely poised for some big weeks, and he 100% should be rostered in all leagues at the ninth best quarterback right now.
Yeah, and there's one other guy that I want to mention, And this was my breakout player candidate last Thursday for the last Thursday Night Football, and that's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, I know a lot of people are hot on saying, oh, this guy put up a good game. Let me start him for the next one. I will tell you, Ryan Fitzpatrick is another one of those players. He might get you 2-3 good weeks in a row, and then the next game he'll go out and throw you a 7-interception game. So that's a name. If you need somebody to plug into the lineup, he could be an option, but just be careful of grabbing him off of one hot start and thinking that he's going to have that same kind of production moving forward. Now, I want to take a move onto the tight ends. Last week, we were blessed with John's Drew Sample pick, who may still hold out for later on in the year. All right, John, we're starting with you.
All right, yeah. So in the tight end situation, the big name I'm looking at is going to be Jimmy Graham from Chicago. He definitely didn't do too great. Didn't play the first game. Second game, second game he only had 1 reception. But in last week with Nick Foles, 6 receptions on 9 targets for 2 touchdowns. Foles obviously has always done well with his tight end. He had Zach Ertz for many years in Philadelphia when he was playing when Carson Wentz's absence. So definitely one to look up. Not rostered in too many leagues, so should have no problem picking him up if you need a tight end streamer. Another good one to look at also is Greg Olsen. Always Mr. Reliable. Finds a way just to get receptions, and he definitely helped out Russell Wilson a good bit there against Dallas.
Yeah, well, there's Dalton Schultz. I mentioned him last week, is still there. He saw 4 for 42, so and he's involved in a high-powered offense, so he's someone again to consider. And then another guy for tight end might be Eric Ebron from Pittsburgh. I mean, Roethlisberger talked him up in camp, and he's seen his targets increase as the weeks have gone on, and he did see 7 targets, including a touchdown last week in Pittsburgh. That was after Deontay Johnson went out with a concussion, so definitely monitor Johnson's status. But Ebron looks like he's a growing part of an offense that looks to be pretty solid, especially, Roethlisberger looks to be back, and they have some, again, pretty decent matchup against Tennessee. We saw what Minnesota did to the Titans. So consider Ebron as well.
John, what's a good defense to look out for this week?
Yeah, so I've pretty much been streaming myself. I did pick up the Rams early on as a draft. One to stream probably. I think this week could be it's like not sneaky good. They've been good in the past. Is Seattle against Miami. Coming to Miami. Not too sure what the weather's like going to be on Sunday, but that Seattle pass defense is a little rough. But I think forcing Ryan Fitzpatrick to throw more could definitely benefit the Seahawks. So that's probably that's a good streaming target. And then outside of that, the Bills, if they are available, I think Las Vegas is another. It just depends which Las Vegas you get. If you can shut down Darren Waller, which the Patriots showed they did, you're usually being for a good time. And I do think the Bills are a solid enough defense. Again, if they're available in your league.
Yeah, I mean, I like to stream defense as well, and I noticed in 3 out of my 4 leagues, a lot of people previous week dropped the Rams defense because of their upcoming matchup against Buffalo from last week. So if they're available, I definitely agree with John, would be my first priority at home against the Giants. I also like the Seahawks as well. And then looking down the list, I mean, you could make the case. You could go either one, Broncos or Jets defense on the upcoming Thursday night game, which we're going to touch on. But both teams just look horrible. The Broncos are starting Brett Ripien at quarterback, and we all know how much of a dumpster fire the Jets look. Unfortunately for you, John, sorry about that, man.
Yeah, it's okay.
One of those two defenses could be an option for you as well if you're one of those people who likes to stream defenses.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that game Thursday night, that's going to be a fun one. But that being said, I know a lot of time we don't like to go into the kickers, but there is one guy who really stepped out this week, who used to be one of the top players in fantasy when it comes to kickers, and that's Stephen Gostkowski. What do you think? Do you think this is a guy who's worth changing up your lineup over?
A kicker is a kicker is a kicker to me. I mean, like the top of the line, you're going to get good stuff. Another one you can look at is Mason Crosby. He had a good game too against New Orleans also. But Gostkowski, when he's on, he is 100% one of the better kickers in the league. Doesn't have quite the leg like he used to, but he is just about money from 35 and in.
Yeah, for sure. So that being said, I think that about wraps it up for the waiver wire pickups portion of this. And now we want to move into your questions. However, the first way we're going to start this, I've seen a lot of questions. Do you like player X over a certain player? So I'm going to go into a few popular names that have been floating out there. All three of these guys are people who haven't quite met expectations yet, but could possibly prove to have that potential down the road. And for this week, I want to stick to a theme of the AFC North. Starting with the quarterback position, this guy was one of the number one or two choices, depending on how you look at it, at quarterback this year, and that's Lamar Jackson. And yeah, he showed already last year that he has all the potential in the world. He could go and put up monster games any given week. But so far, for 3 weeks, he's the 12th ranked quarterback. And a lot of people are looking down at him. It might be a potential buy low situation, which we'll get into our buy low, sell high shortly. But in the meantime, I do want to take a look at Lamar Jackson specifically and ask if you like any of these players better or worse than Lamar Jackson. So, Bobby, we'll start with you. And the first question is Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson?
Now, just want to be clear real quick, K-Mac. Are we saying which player we like better rest of season?
Rest
or
of
is this
season.
just going to be for this week?
Rest of season.
Okay. I'd still go with Lamar Jackson. I just think, is this supposed to be a rapid fire thing, or could we do some analysis here?
Tell me your analysis.
Okay. Yeah. Look, obviously Kyler Murray's a stud, and he's going to put up top 5 numbers. But I mean, Lamar Jackson, after 3 weeks, we can't just forget what he did last season. And I mean, he's in one of the most skilled quarterbacks in terms of being able to run with that dual threat. He's in an offense that's tailor-made for him. And again, there is no preseason, and they might take a little time to get things going. They're gonna be angry after that loss to Kansas City, and they started off a little rocky last year too. Cleveland came in week 4 last year and just ran all over them and completely shut them down. And that was early in the season. And then they started to get on a nice little run. So I'm definitely still all in on Lamar Jackson over Kyler Murray.
All right, John, we got Dak Prescott or Lamar Jackson.
Oof. Give me all those Dak Prescott shares. I've been very adamant about Dak Prescott since the very beginning. I drafted him. I've been picking up. Everyone is so quick to grab Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. Very much what's worth it. But Dak is a close. He's definitely the 1B between those two of 1A. Nothing against Lamar Jackson. I personally love Lamar Jackson. I just wouldn't spend the draft capital or the shares so early on a quarterback like that. And like Bobby said, he started rough. I think it was week 3, week 4 that they got their teeth kicked in at home by Cleveland before he went on a stupid tear. And so maybe this was that week 3 getting their teeth kicked in that'll exalt him back to the Lamar Jackson that we expect. But no, I just love Dak in that offense, with all between the 3 wide receivers, Zeke Elliott, and then we'll see Dalton Schultz too coming up behind that O-line. He's definitely well protected. Just popped off for 470. So and he's got decent enough matchups coming up: Cleveland and the Giants over the next 2. So again, it's close, but I personally like Dak.
All right, Bobby, we got Josh Allen against Lamar Jackson. Now, Josh Allen, is one of my favorite players this year. He's already come off to a great start, far exceeding expectations. Right now, the number 2 ranked quarterback in fantasy. What is your thoughts on him versus Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, and like Sean said, man, just got to put this out there. I mean, this is like splitting hairs when it comes to these, because these are all, of course, all of these players are extremely good and valuable in fantasy football. So we're kind of splitting hairs here. And for this one, I think I'm still going to go with Lamar Jackson here. I just think that upside with his rushing ability, I know Josh Allen has that too, but I mean, I just still would go with Lamar Jackson. I think they're going to figure out the passing game. I think he's still going to get better from last year. I think he is going to get better in the passing game, which is a little bit more of his weakness. And like John said, I think this is going to be fuel to the fire. But man, it's just so close. I mean, Josh Allen, I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Allen finishes the number 1 quarterback over Lamar and Mahomes as well. But I still would, if you had a gun to my head, I would still side with Lamar. But it's just extremely close, and I'd be ecstatic with either guy.
All right, sticking to the AFC North, we look at the Cincinnati Bengals and their running back, Joe Mixon. Bobby, I know we're both Joe Mixon owners.
All three of us.
All three
are
of
Joe
us
Mixon.
are Joe Mixon owners, so we're all in this same boat together. I still think his best games are ahead of him. I think his next game may be one of his best games, but that's just me and moving on ahead. But what do you think rest of the season? John, we're going to start with you. Joe Mixon or Kenyan Drake?
Oof, that's tough. I'm a big Joe Mixon fan. Like I've had Joe Mixon the last 3 years. I've drafted him literally in the third round the last 3 years, like without fail. He's always he's had a little like early on ankle injuries like the last couple of years, but he's always been a slow starter. But he still finds a way to get to like that 1100, 1200 yard mark. So definitely rest of the season. I do like Joe Mixon's outlook, but in that matchup or in that comparison, I definitely prefer Kenyan Drake right now. I think he's on a better team and he's just in a better offense between Kyler Murray, and they just look like they're having a lot more fun than Cincinnati is. But that's not to say I dislike Joe Mixon. I just like Kenyan Drake more.
All right, Bobby. I think I already know how you're going to answer this, but Mike Davis or Joe Mixon?
Well, I mean, first of all, again, with 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 these type of slow starters, I mean, we have to remember that it's only week 3, and in a lot of scenarios, we have to look at the big picture, and we can't just jump ship on some guys this early, and especially if you drafted them high, like Joe Mixon. But yeah, I would definitely take Joe Mixon rest of the season. Mike Davis, if you told me Christian McCaffrey was going to be out for the rest of the season, I would actually take Mike Davis in a PPR league due to his receiving upside over Joe Mixon's right now. But seeing as Mike Davis is going to be a temporary option until McCaffrey comes back, and you're telling me rest of season, I still am a believer in Joe Mixon, and I would take Mixon over Mike Davis.
All right, John, we have James Robinson or Joe Mixon.
Oh God, we're gonna do this again.
If we hadn't heard enough of him already.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think they're both very, very comparable in like how they get their numbers, how they get their yards. But that's super close. I think give me James Robinson. Just but that one's really close. Like I said, nothing against Joe Mixon. I love him, but I think in that one, I think it's a slight edge to James Robinson.
Glad you're making these calls and not me. All right, still sticking in the AFC North at wide receiver, Cleveland Browns. We're going to take a look at Odell Beckham Jr. Now, Bobby, I'm going to ask you, Terry McLaurin or Odell Beckham Jr.?
Yeah, for me, actually, it's pretty easy. I would definitely side with Terry McLaurin. Odell Beckham Jr., since he's been in Cleveland, him and Baker just haven't seemed to look quite right. They really haven't had that chemistry, that connection. I mean, some guys naturally have it. Like when Randy Moss went to New England, him and Tom Brady instantly hit it off. When Amari Cooper was traded to the Cowboys 2 years ago, him and Dak instantly had that connection. You can see that on the field, and it just looked like Baker and him are not on the same page, and they don't look like they're tuned in with each other. Add on top of that the fact that the Cleveland Browns now bringing Kevin Stefanski in the offense as to be their coach, and his philosophy on offense is they're going to run the ball through Chubb and Hunt, and we've seen that. And they're a run-first team. And again, I think that Odell Beckham Jr. is only at name value right now. I don't believe he's going to reach that upside that we all think he can get to this year. And as opposed to Terry McLaurin, I mean, it's a shame he's on the Redskins, or I'm sorry, the football team, because I feel like that type of team, Dwayne Haskins isn't the best quarterback right now, might be holding him back a little bit. But Terry McLaurin is a stud, man. I mean, we saw the targets he's getting. We saw his talent, and he's only going to get better. And he remains the number one passing receiver in this offense. Again, it's not very sexy with that offense. We're talking about the Washington football team here, but I just think McLaurin's still too good to pass up, and I would take him over Odell Beckham Jr.
All right, John, we have Marquise Brown or Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, I mean, like, Odell, I've been saying it for years, like, ever since he's gone to Cleveland, even, like, the end of his Giants tenure, like, we're literally keeping Odell as an elite receiver because of one catch he made in one game in his rookie year on Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys. Granted, it was a fantastic catch, one of the greatest catches I've ever seen, but, like, that's the reason why we're still considering him an elite receiver. Like, it doesn't seem right. I'll get 3 names for you. Cole Beasley, Adam Humphries, and Randall Cobb. All three are rostered in like less than 30% of leagues, and all three are currently ranked higher in PPR scoring than Odell Beckham Jr. And Odell's like a 99% rostered player. Back to the original question. Give me Marquise Brown all day, every day.
That's enough said. All right. So, Bobby, I already heard your thoughts on Odell Beckham Jr., but I'm going to ask you, A.J. Brown or Odell Beckham Jr.?
I'm sorry, K-Mac, can you come back with that first name, please?
A.J. Brown or Odell Beckham Jr.?
Yeah, I'd still say A.J. Brown. And he's somebody you could even get if you're sitting pretty at 2-0, 3-0, and you need some receiver depth. You might be able to get A.J. Brown at a discount, but when he comes back, we've seen the Titans start to open it up a little bit more. The passing game, Tannehill threw for 321 yards last week. I think they're starting to go to the pass a little bit more. And A.J. Brown, obviously, we saw his potential and the chemistry that he has with Ryan Tannehill. He has all the upside in the world. Give me A.J. Brown.
All right. So before we get into the rest of the questions, I want to get into some buy lows, sell highs. So, John, we're going to start with you. Who's a player that you like to buy low on this week?
We talked about him enough. We even did a little segment on him just a second ago, but that is definitely Joe Mixon. Like I said earlier, he finds his way to get to 1,100 rushing yards, 1,200 in that same ballpark every year. He's a little slow starter. You could definitely get him at a discount. Like I said, I'm a Mixon guy. I will have all his shares, and I will definitely do my best to get him back. And then a sell high, another running back. Give me James Conner. Conner, he's had a couple of big games back to back coming off the injury, but he's injury prone, and you just don't know what you're getting out of him sometimes. So if you have if you have a void to fill, definitely dangle him for like another mid round, or mid receiver one, something along those lines.
All right, Bobby, who's your buy low for this week?
Well, there's a lot, but I would say anybody on the Houston Texans offense, Deshaun Watson, David Johnson, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks. The Texans had to start against Kansas City. We talked about their defense looking pretty good. Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I mean, those are about the three toughest defenses you can face. Their schedule opens up significantly. The next two games, Minnesota and Jacksonville. So I would definitely buy low on the Texans skill position players. And again, I talked about it last week, but I am in agreement with Joe Mixon, by the way. And I think all three of us are based on from what I'm seeing, I think we're in the minority here when it comes to Joe Mixon. A lot of people are ready to jump ship, and they're really not happy with him. But the other guy, again, is Kenyan Drake. I mean, he's fourth in the NFL in carries right now. He's getting the work. He's in that high-powered offense. It's only a matter of time before he starts producing, and we know he's capable of it. And plus, they get Carolina this week, which is a great matchup for him. So buy low some of the guys on the Texans, their skill position players, and Kenyan Drake.
And who would you like to sell high?
So I'm gonna look at trying to sell high on Nick Chubb. Now again, not saying Nick Chubb's not valuable, not saying he's not a stud this year, but I think his value is higher right now than it's ever gonna be. And I'll tell you that because I'm concerned about his floor. I don't trust the Browns defense to keep them all the time in games to where they can control the clock and run the ball. I mean, the last two games Cleveland played was against Washington and Cincinnati, so teams that they should dominate, and they did. And that's when we saw Chubb just get that incredible workload. And Chubb's really a non-factor in the passing game. And we saw when they were falling behind in week 1 against Baltimore that Chubb only had 10 carries. So when they're in those situations, they might pretend to go with Kareem Hunt, who's the preferred pass catcher in that offense, and Chubb might be phased out in that negative game script. So that floor is enough to concern me, just to where I might look to sell him high. If you can get a mid-range RB1 for him, I would definitely pull the trigger. But in no means I'm saying that he's not valuable or he won't be a solid producer this year. But somebody I'm looking to sell high if I can is Nick Chubb for the right price.
Speaking of Cleveland Browns trying to sell high, I feel you also feel the same way about Kareem Hunt, or else you wouldn't have tried to trade him to me for Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, man. I just think his floor is safer though. But and I love Joe Mixon too, and that's why I sent that offer. And there's a lot of people that would have accepted that trade, Hunt and Mixon. So Hunt for Mixon.
All right. That being said, I want to move into some of your questions. I wanted to start with Brandon, who asks Antonio Gibson or Leonard Fournette for the rest of the season. John, we're going to start with you.
Oof, that's a tough one. I probably would take. I'd probably go Leonard Fournette just because I think because that offense is better. Not to say that Antonio Gibson just finds a way. He's been finding a way to get points. Had a nice. He's been over 10 points the last 2 games. And again, like they're not a good football team. They somehow found a way to win that first game, but against Arizona.
But
And
they are the football team.
they are the football team. They're not a good football team, but they are the football team. But again, like his workload, it's not a huge workload. 13 carries 2 weeks ago, 9 carries last week. He did find pay dirt, which is always good. Nice 6 points there. But give me Fournette. I just like that offense is better. He'll be in better game scripts.
All right, Bobby, same question posed to you.
Yeah, it's close too, but give me Fournette as well. He has the higher upside, especially in that offense. As for Gibson, I love his talent. I love his skill set. But again, it's just that team that limits him, and there's always Peyton Barber lurking in the background. You never know what they're gonna do there. But yeah, give me Fournette in that situation.
All right, and Robert asks to Robert, how high can Mike Evans be sold in a dynasty/keeper league right now with Godwin constantly being injured?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily sell Mike Evans. I still think he's in the prime of his career, and he's still one of their go-to options. I mean, Godwin's been emerging as well, but I still think Mike Evans is a solid piece to that offense, and he's going to be still solid for some years to come. So I don't know if I'd even look to sell him, but when it comes to how high can you sell him, I mean, I know Dynasty you're looking more long term, but based on this season so far, he hasn't really gotten off to a good start. So I don't know if you can sell him much higher, but in that situation, but I just more look to hold Mike Evans.
John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with him. I mean, like he had 2 receptions for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns. So like, I mean, it's not exactly the best workload from this past week, but I think like Bobby said, he's in the prime. He's de facto number 1, more so that but it's with Tom Brady as quarterback too. So like you have a fading Tom Brady and an emerging Mike Evans. If they can build that chemistry, it could definitely revive Brady a little bit, who is definitely been fading. But he did have his best game this week. But I probably still stash him for a little bit, for at least a couple more weeks until the trade deadline, or you actually are in a dire need of something.
All right. Now K-Mac asks to John, is Devontae Parker or Robert Woods worth starting over Terry McLaurin this week? I like that juicy matchup of Parker versus the 32nd ranked defense against wide receivers, but hard to start him over either of the other guys.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough one. I'm actually in a similar situation. I have Robert Woods and Devontae Parker in one of my leagues. I'm still riding with Robert Woods. I do like that matchup against the Giants a lot better. But it's close though, because you just saw what the Cowboys did to them. And Devontae Parker is definitely, and I think the secondary's a little banged up too. It's close. It just depends honestly what you're feeling. I do like the matchup better that it's at home than it is away, but I think I still like Woods at home against the Giants more.
All right, Bobby, I'm not going to ask you that question because I know you're in the same league as me.
Yep.
But I will ask you this question from Richie, who asks, would you trade James Robinson for CEH?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, James Robinson's been great, and I think he will continue to be great, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on a different tier than him, in my opinion, and he's playing, I mean, on one of the best teams in football, and I think Robinson being on the Jaguars, if we're splitting hairs here, might cap his upside a little bit. CEH shown he can do it all. He can catch the ball, he can run the ball, and the touchdowns are going to come. And when you're in that offense, I mean, we know how valuable that role is. It's clear to me. You smash that accept button if someone's offering you CEH for James Robinson without even hesitation.
What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I agree. Like that offense is it's gonna happen for CEH eventually. Again, like we definitely love James Robinson on this podcast. With basically the entire podcast last week. But yeah, if you can get CEH for him, 100%, you go for it.
All right, so John, this question I'm going to pose to you. Javi asks, Le'Veon Bell or Leonard Fournette for the rest of the season?
Yeah, same thing as the Antonio Gibson one. Give me Fournette. Granted, like Obviously, with Rojo, you're not sure like who's gonna get more carries, who's not. Bell, he's in an awful situation, being hurt and then being stuck in the Adam Gase doghouse for no apparent reason other than the fact that he's a running back. So I would definitely go with Fournette. But again, if there is a coaching change that involves and they bring in like a more offensive interim head coach, I think Le'Veon Bell could be definitely better. So I think obviously like you're waiting anyway because he's probably in your IR slot. But definitely give me Fournette though at the moment.
All right, Bobby, your thoughts?
Yeah, agreeing with John. Give me Fournette, especially at the moment. I'm still loving his upside, and right now I don't really want any parts of the Jets roster, and it might be that way rest of season. So yeah, give me Fournette.
All right. So Steven asks, Gurley or Drake for this week? Bobby, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, it's Kenyan Drake for this week. Obviously, rest of the season, Kenyan Drake, but definitely this week too. I mean, he's playing the Carolina Panthers, who've just been gashed on the ground their first 3 games. That defense is not very good. We've been saying it for a while, but I just think eventually when you Drake, you're getting your fourth most carries in the NFL in that type of offense. I mean, eventually the breakthrough is bound to happen. To me, it's clearly Drake as well. Todd Gurley is seeming to even fade from that team. I mean, Brian Hill started getting some more carries, um, and they might be falling behind against Green Bay, which is their opponent. And when they fall behind, Todd Gurley hasn't even been catching the ball at all much. So they're just going to start throwing it if that's the situation. And his floor is just way too low. You have to hope that Gurley just falls into the end zone, or else it looks like a bad game for him. So yeah, it's clearly Drake for me.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll fall behind. They'll probably be up by 15 points and then give up the lead in the fourth quarter.
That's true.
So, John, this next question is for you. Robert asks, am I crazy for considering having Justin Jefferson over Hollywood Brown rest of season, or am I a prisoner of the moment?
Definitely a prisoner of the moment. He's like we've said, he's definitely the number 2 receiver in that offense and the third option behind, including Dalvin Cook. But that's not to say if you're in a dynasty league or a keeper league, definitely worth the stash if you can get it. But I'm taking Hollywood Brown on all cases. He had an off game against Kansas City, but the entire offense did. Like I said, it struggles when Lamar struggles. If Lamar Jackson is on, Hollywood Brown is usually right behind him, helping him along the way. So give me Hollywood.
I don't know, Bobby. Are you in a dynasty/keeper league?
I do not happen to be in one, though.
Okay. So, last question before we move on. Bobby, I'll pose this to you. Seth asked, Mahomes versus the Patriots or Rodgers versus the Falcons this week?
I mean, from what we saw against Baltimore, you should just come away with the fact that you never sit Patrick Mahomes unless he's ruled out with an injury or he's on his bye week. You start Patrick Mahomes regardless of the matchup. Give me Mahomes.
John?
Yeah, Mahomes is set and forget territory. I would even say start him on your bye week, and there's a chance he gets 2 points somehow.
And I would say just trade either one of them. Don't hold on to both of them. There's no reason to keep both of those guys on your roster. You could turn either one of them. You could turn Mahomes around for a lot at this point. Like, you could be getting a lot from him. Or you could just turn around Rodgers and have something on your bench, or have maybe an RB2 or 3. There's so many options you could have, but there's really no need unless you're playing a 2 QB or super flex league to have 2 like high-end caliber quarterbacks on a roster, and that's my opinion at least.
No, I definitely agree. You have a QB1 and then a QB. What's Rodgers like? He's like QB like 5 or 6, isn't he? Oh, sorry, he's a little lower than that. Yeah, he's he's QB6. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, no need in having QB3 and QB6. Yeah, definitely flip one of them, 100%.
Yeah.
So,
especially if you're, someone who owns Saquon or CMC and you need help, or you just have some struggling skill position players, whether it's injury or they're just struggling. I mean, that's clear. Definitely look to try to flip one of them if you're in that situation where you have 2 stud QBs.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I want to move on to our next segment before we wrap up and go for our projections for the breakout player of this Thursday night football game coming up soon. But before we go into that, just want to recap our last breakout player of the week. last week we had John choosing CD Lamb, and who came in just below the ESPN projections of 11 points. Bobby selected Hollywood Brown, who came in at around 3 points. Bud chose AJ Green, who came in at 8 points, projected around 11 or so. I don't have the exact numbers. The only number that really matters is that Allen Robinson, my pick, popped off for 30 points when he was projected for 15.6. But that's enough. I'm not going to brag again about myself, but I'm just saying I make some pretty good picks sometimes. That being said, we're going to go into the game. After that Monday Night Football game, the next football game that we're being given is Jets Broncos on Thursday Night Football. I hate that I'm making a pick for this game. I hate the NFL for shoving this game in my face. I hate the Jets. I hate the Broncos, but I'm going to go ahead and pick anyways. And I want to pick a defense, but I'm going to have fun with this. I think that this is Jerry Jeudy's breakout game with their third-string quarterback. Jerry Jeudy is going to pop off and show why he was one of the best wide receivers coming into the draft this year. And that is my breakout player for this Thursday Night Football. All right, John, you're next.
I mean, I'm a Jets fan, and even I don't want to watch this game. Like I said, I'm with you, K-Mac. I really want to pick the Broncos defense, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go with my boy, Sam Darnold. Sammy, you're the franchise. I listen to you all the time on the radio. Please, man, just give me this one. Just give me this one, buddy. I just want it. I'll be wearing your jersey on Thursday. I just need it, please.
All right, Bobby, your pick.
Yeah, again, I mean, this is just a hard game to pick. I had to really dig deep to figure it out. But I'll go with Broncos tight end Noah Fant here. Through the first 3 weeks, he's the leading target share, has the leading target share on this team. Especially with a new, younger quarterback, a lot of times they look to their tight end as their safety blanket. And I'm sure as heck don't really want to pick anybody on the Jets either. But Fant's projected for 11 points. I think he finds the end zone, and I think he builds up some receptions. I think he can smash that.
Yeah, again, I don't love any of these players.
Yeah, me neither.
Probably be best off picking a defense anyways, but let's have some fun with this. I got Jerry Jeudy. You got Noah Fant. John, you have
Sam Darnold. Yeah, like I said, we very well could have picked defenses. We could have picked, two of us could have picked the defense. The other one would have had to go for something random. But give me my boy. I love him. He's 12 and a half.
Yeah, for his projections this week, I think that you might be right. I feel that he has a somewhat decent chance to not totally be hot garbage on Thursday night.
I mean, like I said, I told you before we started, this very well could be a 6-3 game of just an absolute awful game to watch. But hey, I'm going to watch it. Might as well watch it with me.
Yeah, stay tuned. It still is NFL football, and there are still some fantasy implications on the line. I don't know. Are there any other players that you like just straight up fantasy-wise from this game on Thursday, Bobby?
No.
John?
Yeah, I'm the same boat as you, man. There's really nothing good coming out of this game. It's going to be awful. If you can pick up, you're probably not the only one thinking about it, but pick up the Broncos defense, because anyone against the Jets seems to be in for a good day.
Yeah, and I feel, there's Noah Fant, like you mentioned, he's a good fantasy tight end. He might be a decent option for this weekend, or for this Thursday. And you look at somebody else, I'm not really sure what is going on with Phillip Lindsay's situation, but if he's out, maybe Melvin Gordon. I don't know. This is a game that I really personally don't want any part of, but I guess we'll wait and see. I know that we've done a great job getting you excited for this Thursday football, but
watch this be just a high-scoring game. We thought the Ravens and Chiefs were going to potentially be that Rams-Chiefs game from 2 years ago where it could be in the 40s or 50s, a shootout. Watch this Jets-Broncos game just all of a sudden just have tons of offense and be 43-40 or some crazy stuff like that. The NFL, you just when you think something's going to happen, it's the exact opposite.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, so that being said, after this Thursday, we have a great slate of games coming up for this week. I'm excited for that. we will be back here live on Sunday. And we're going to answer all of your questions live on the air Sunday at 11:30. In the meantime, I'd love for you guys to follow us, subscribe, do whatever you can. We're on multiple podcast platforms now. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, a bunch of other podcasts that I haven't even heard of. We're on YouTube, Twitch. Subscribe to all of it. We really appreciate your support and you listening in, asking questions every week. And yeah, make sure to tune in to us every Tuesday, every Sunday. So that's about all we have for today. Alongside John Viveros. Did I just butcher your last name?
Yeah, it's all right. Viveros.
John Viveros. Robert Janis, which I have to give a quick shout out. It is his birthday today. So happy birthday to Bobby Digital Janis.
Happy birthday, Bobby D.
Oh, thank you guys. Appreciate that.
Turning 46.
Best birthday present doing the podcast here.
Oh, yeah. All right. And that about wraps it up. Thank you. Tune in next time. Until then, good luck in fantasy this week.